Park police are...
Let's start by storming Brockton!
What's going on, everyone? So welcome to my latest video. This is obviously my latest catch-up video. This time it is for May of 2022. This is where I talk about all the 2022 films that I saw in the month of May 2022. I will be talking about them very briefly. If you want to know my full in-depth thoughts on some of these movies, you guys can obviously check out my Letterboxd. Letterboxd is a great site for film buffs, film critics, just people in general that like talking about movies. So the link is down below so you guys can check that out. But again, I will be talking about these movies very quickly. Again, no spoilers, just very quickly talking about how I've seen them and then giving you guys my rating. So guys, enough exposition. Let's get started. So the first movie I saw in terms of May of 2022 films, it was Hatching. It's an independent movie that's a horror film. It is definitely a movie that is not for everyone, but I quite liked it. I could definitely see myself rewatching it. It's a lot more symbolic than you might think going into it. Like, I know some people probably went into it thinking it was going to be a body horror film. It definitely has elements of that, but it is first and foremost a very symbolic movie that at the same time is something that really got me thinking, and I quite liked it. And that's why for me personally, Hatching, I will be giving a... So yeah, that was Hatching. Next up, we have Everything Everywhere All at Once. Yes, I did watch this in April, but I did actually watch it a second time in the month of May, so I wanted to, once again bring attention to this movie. This is a A24 film. It is really good. It is one of the best multiverse movies you will see. It is not the only multiverse movie to come out in 2022, and I'll get into that in a second, but Everything Everywhere All at Once, if you like original films, if you like movies that are funny, genre bending, it's definitely a movie that will very, very much so be worth your time. I would highly recommend it. It's a movie that honestly leaves you speechless. And yeah, Everything Everywhere All at Once, I would personally be giving a... So next up, I mentioned how there was another multiverse movie that came out this year. That's right, we have Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. This is a Sam Raimi movie, and I have actually been watching a lot of his movies, so that way I could rank his work in preparation for this movie coming out. I still have to watch Darkman, but I was kind of looking forward to this movie, but I gotta say I was also kind of nervous, especially after watching Everything Everywhere All at Once. My fears kind of came true, though, because I found this movie to be quite disappointing. It's a very underbaked movie. It's a movie that has character development that feels very, very light. Doctor Strange is a titular character, obviously, but he really doesn't really do that much in this movie. And quite frankly, it's a movie that is very heavy on visual effects, but there is a lot of it that's kind of shoddy, especially that opening sequence. Oh, my goodness. A lot of fan service per usual. There's just not really much for me personally to recommend about this movie. I was disappointed. I know a lot of people that like this movie, so I'll put it to you this way. If you're a fan of the MCU, odds are you'll probably dig this movie. If you're someone that's kind of a critic of the MCU, like myself, you might not like it. Again, there are certain MCU movies that I do like, such as Avengers 3 and 4, Black Panther, movies like those, but this is definitely one of those movies that I really didn't like, unfortunately. And Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, I will be giving a... So next up, we have Petite Maman, which is the follow-up film from the same director that The Portrait of a Lady on Fire. Wasn't a huge fan of that movie. I thought it was solid, and I honestly thought that watching Petite Maman would get me to want to revisit Portrait of a Lady on Fire. But honestly, it kind of did the opposite. By no means is this a bad movie. Petite Maman is a very well-crafted film. It's just a film that kind of left me feeling detached. It's a very short running time movie. I think it was like 77 minutes, but I felt the length. And that should tell you something about it. I don't know if it says something about my patience or if it just says something about the movie itself. But either way, I found myself very detached about this movie. I appreciated it from afar. Like, I liked the slice of life approach in some aspects, but other aspects, I just wasn't really a big fan of it. But at the same time, I can see why this movie has worked for a lot of people. I can see that. I wish I was one of those people, but alas, I just think it's an okay movie. It's an okay movie that does have some competent things going for it in terms of the filmmaking, but alas, I just found it to be emotionally hollow for me personally. That's why Petite Maman, I will be giving a... So next up we have The Duke. This is a movie that on paper the premise sounds intriguing, and I do like Jim Broadbent, but the actual execution left a lot to be desired, and it's a quite disappointing movie. Like early on, I thought it was pretty strong, but the pacing really fizzles out. Like I would say even more so than Petite Maman and Doctor Strange into the Multiverse of Madness. Like this is just one of those movies where it's baffling the tone and the pacing that it shifts into. Like it goes from like being a really engaging, well directed movie to a very flat and by the numbers movie. And for the life of me, I don't know why that was decided. But again, wanted to like this movie, but alas, here we are. The Duke I person will be giving a. So next up, we have a pretty big surprise. We have Chippendale Rescue Rangers. So I grew up watching the TV show from the 80s as well as the shorts from, I think it was like the 1930s and 40s. And I'm never really a big fan of Chippendale, to be honest. Like it was always something that was in my childhood for sure, but it was never something where I was like, yep, I love them. In fact, I kind of was annoyed by them growing up, but I gotta say, this movie that's on Disney Plus, it's actually quite enjoyable. Like I found myself consistently smiling, and a lot of the humor works really well. Like I think that the fact that it is a movie that's clearly trying to start a franchise, but at the same time is poking fun of all these other different franchises. I don't know. I thought the humor was pretty funny. It does have its flaws for sure, no question about that, and it does fall into some cliches. But I will say overall, it is a movie that it's visually interesting. It has pretty good humor. Like I said, it worked quite a bit in terms of me personally. And I thought that it was very fast paced. I mean, it's a movie that you can watch with kids, and, you know, both adults and kids will get enjoyment from it. I personally think, at least. So for me personally, Chippendale Rescue Rangers, I will be giving a. Next up, we have a very divisive film. We have Men, which is the latest A24 film and also the latest film from Alex Garland, who I'm a huge fan of. He's the same director that gave us Ex Machina and, of course, Annihilation. The trailer for Men I avoided like the plague. I always heard the you know, like the humming and everything. But I would always go on my phone when the trailer would play. And I'm glad that I didn't know anything really about this movie going into it, because I do feel as though this is a movie that the journey itself is worth taking, even if you don't like the movie as a whole. It's a film that you can't help but, after watching it, wanting to talk about it, because there's a lot of imagery that, holy cow, you're not going to forget, especially in that third act. My goodness. Body horror, really good uses of practical effects, incredible cinematography, really strong performances, a really good emphasis on tone and structure. It's a movie that I feel like I will gain more and more appreciation for upon multiple viewings. As it stands, I did feel like some of the pacing was a bit of an issue early on, but it is a film that, again, I already know I want to revisit. So it definitely seems like it's going to have that lasting impact. So for me personally, I would say know yourself, but at the same time, I would still say screw it. Watch Men, because it is a good movie. And I personally would be giving Men a. So last but not least, in terms of May 2022 movies that I saw, we have Top Gun Maverick. So this is a movie from the same director that gave us, obviously, Tron Legacy, Oblivion, Only the Brave. Joseph Kosinski's someone that I've always been on the lookout for. I think that he's a director that has an eye. He has a really knack for cinematography and just stunt work. And I also like the fact that he has a huge emphasis on like score in movies. Top Gun Maverick, I think, is better than the original for sure. And I love the aerial sequences. I love how most of this movie is shot in camera, especially the stunt work and everything. It's incredible. It's a great looking film. It sounds amazing too. Like I definitely could see it getting some Oscar nominations in those categories. Tom Cruise again proves that he is not only a really strong contender in terms of just being one of the best stunt actors that's working today, but he also just has a lot of charisma, and you just can't help but really be infatuated with this character and feel like he's very intriguing. I will say the romance between him and Jennifer Connelly, I was like, not a big fan of. Some of the dialogue was early on, especially. Early on in the first act, there's a heavy emphasis on nostalgia. Wasn't a big fan of that, but I will say Act 2 and 3 of this movie definitely makes up for some of the issues early on in the movie. And I would say definitely watch this movie, especially in theaters. It was quite an experience on IMAX. So I would definitely say Top Gun Maverick, it has its issues for sure, but it's still a movie I would definitely recommend. And I probably will revisit down the line for sure. So Top Gun Maverick for me personally, I would be giving a... So you guys, thank you very much for watching. Those are all the movies I saw in May of 2022 that were in theaters or streaming that came out in 2022. Let me know which movies you saw in May of 2022 down below, and which of these did you like. Looking forward to June. June has some potentially interesting movies such as like Black Phone, Elvis, Jurassic World 3, Crimes of the Future, so stuff like that. Gonna be curious to see. But anyways, guys, again, let me know the movies that you saw in May of 2022. And as always, don't forget the subscription, notification bell, follow me on Letterboxd, and I will catch you guys later.